Alright, I'll admit it, this pilot episode was actually very solid. And after watching it, I definitely want to see more of this. I actually may stick around to watch episodes weekly, even though I'm not too keen on watching streaming shows weekly. I wish they would drop all at once, but hey, this is the state of streaming services. This is TV now. Streaming services are essentially regular cable TV. I don't get it. I don't get it. I really don't. I wish it wasn't like this, but it is. But regardless of that, this was a solid episode. I think this had a very solid start. It actually subverted my expectations in a way I didn't think was possible, but it managed to do that. And we're going to actually get into that, the good, the bad, and what I hope to see from the rest of the series. But before we get into all that, I want you guys to go ahead and like and subscribe before you've watched the video, because that's what YouTube wants you to do, and that's what I want you to do. So go ahead, do it, don't waste any time, and let's get into the video. Now, I do want to preface this one thing before I actually get into the good of this episode, and it's the fact that I was actually very skeptical going into this Penguin show, or even them greenlighting a Penguin series, because when I first heard that the Batman was getting spin-off shows, I was like, is that really necessary? And especially for Penguin. But after watching the Batman, I thought, somebody like, Colin Farrell's Penguin getting a show would actually be a good thing, because I thought he was like one of the very few good things about the Batman. And not that I didn't like the Batman by any means, but there were just a lot of things that didn't I didn't think were that great compared to like what everyone else was saying about the movie. But I thought Colin Farrell did a very good job as the Penguin, and I was very interested to see where they were going to take his character in the series. And looking at the pilot episode, or just watching it, I was very impressed with how things were, and I think Colin Farrell is just as good as he was in the Batman as the Penguin. And to further add on to Colin Farrell's Penguin, or just his character alone, they did a lot of things in this episode that I didn't expect them to do in a pilot episode. Because with especially TV shows nowadays, they take forever to get to the fucking point, or get to anything interesting. But they actually start off right out the gate, doing some interesting stuff with Penguin, like him killing Alberto Falcone. I was not expecting that. I thought this was going to be one of those things where Penguin's going to have to come to terms with somebody else, leading Gotham in terms of the mobs or the crime in Gotham, or just being the crime lord or whatever. But no, they actually take a different route, and Penguin actually kills the guy up front, because he says that Alberto Falcone was disrespecting him, and he definitely was. And I thought that was just gonna be one of those things where Penguin was just gonna kind of take it on the chin and just kind of deal with that for the rest of the season, and probably kill him later on. But no, he goes ahead and shoots him in the chest, because Alberto is essentially just calling him out, calling him basically a fake ass, saying he doesn't actually care for his success. He's just kissing ass because he wants to get to the top. And he was right, and Penguin takes notice of that, and he's like, you know what, I'm not going to take this disrespect, and he offs Alberto Falcone. And I was like, let's go. Things are fucking getting interesting, at the very start, and it actually makes me want to see more of this, which I hope they stick the landing later on, but we're going to get into that later. But speaking of newer characters like Alberto Falcone, I thought he was very interesting before, they killed him off. But the other interesting characters like Sophia Falcone, she was very interesting. You just look at her character and you're like, okay, this bitch has got a few screws loose, but you can tell she's ahead of everyone else. She's always one step ahead of even someone like Oswald Cobblepot. Because you even notice this when she starts to take notice of her brother not being around. She mentions this to Oswald and says, do you know where my brother is? And you can tell she clearly knows something's up, and that maybe Oswald had something to do with his disappearance or even his death, which she finds out later in the episode. But it's not directly from Oswald, but she just finds out that he's dead later on. But I just thought it was very interesting to have that kind of dynamic of someone being on Oswald's level of intellect, or even being above his level of intellect. And with someone like Sophia, I'm hoping they'll keep doing more interesting stuff with her, her being one step ahead of Oswald, and then Oswald having to counteract that every now and then. I think that'll be a fun watch for sure. And, I think it'll also be a very interesting dynamic of Penguin taking on like a protege or just like him mentoring that kid Victor, or Vic as they call him in the show. And when I saw him like mentoring that kid, or like somewhat mentoring him and like kind of taking him under his wing, and it kind of reminded me of that TV show Gotham, which had a Penguin in the show, or Oswald in the show. And it reminded me of that one instance where he mentored that mute kid or whatever. I can't remember the character's name, but I remember him mentoring that kid and like just having him like do his bidding, and it kind of reminded me of that, but like on a more, I want to say more mature level in this show. And like obviously the character Vic can speak. But another thing that I was going to add regarding Vic is that I was actually kind of surprised they took this route of like, the Penguin mentoring someone, or like, finding this kid and like not killing him. Because like when he first meets Vic and like all his other buddies, they're trying to steal his tires or like his hubcaps or whatever. And I was like, why did Penguin kill this dude? Like, was it just because he felt bad? And like you start to figure out that like it mainly was that reason. He kind of sees a little bit of himself in Vic, and just like being looked down upon, and like everybody overlooking the little guy in Gotham, which I think that's a pretty cool dynamic to have for character development and whatnot. And the last character I want to mention, or highlight from this pilot episode, is Penguin's mother. I thought she was very interesting. I think she was probably the most interesting out of all the characters. And the reason I say that is because I thought there was this very interesting dynamic. I know I keep saying dynamic, but there's a lot of dynamicism within this episode. But the Penguin and his mother have like this sort of like Sopranos like relationship, or like this Italian relationship, where you have this iteration of Penguin who is an Italian, or based off Italian descent, where an Italian man has to overcome his mother because he has so much respect for her, but at the same time he has to like gain his manhood by standing up to her, or like kind of explaining himself to her to some degree. Because you see this when he's basically, his mother confronts him about like what he did, and he admits to her that he killed Alberto Falcone. And he says, okay, what did you want me to say? That it was basically not rational, that it was impulsive decision that I made. And then she kind of like pauses for a second, and then she looks at him and says, are you a pussy boy, or are you a man? And you did that for a reason. You killed Alberto for a reason. And that was like I thought that was a really cool scene, because it's kind of like his mother kind of taking his balls away for a second and then giving them back to him. Kind of like he has to like reclaim his manhood in that very moment when she says, are you a little pussy boy, or are you a man? And like he, basically says, I'm a man. I did what I did because I felt right. I used my instincts and all that. And I thought that was, I mean, it kind of felt like a scene from The Sopranos, or like a ripoff of The Sopranos, but it was good for this, scene to like kind of further Penguin's development, or his character development. And you don't really see this with a lot of TV shows nowadays, where like you have this very interesting relationship with like a mother and her son. And like not even to the point where like the main character, who's like the male lead, isn't completely emasculated by his own mother. He actually has a chance to like redeem himself and like take back his manhood from his own mother. And to me, like stuff like that resonates with me. And not that like I'm like an Italian by any means, or by any stretch of the imagination, but like I totally understand that mindset of like men having to overcome their mothers, especially single moms, because a lot of single moms, especially in today's society, will essentially emasculate their sons in the worst way possible. And a lot of guys feel like they can't stand up for themselves, or like reclaim their manhood. And I just thought that was, that completely resonated with me. And I'm glad, a TV show like this is actually kind of showcasing that, or highlighting that to that extent. But yeah, overall, I liked a lot of the newer characters. I thought this episode did a great job of introducing new characters, and even further showcasing established ones like Penguin. I understand that he's the main character of the show, but still, I thought they did something very interesting with his character, and I hope they maintain that momentum going forward. But unfortunately, I did have some bad with this episode, and that's going to lead me on to my next point. Now, the bad part of this segment of the video isn't necessarily the overall story or the plot for the pilot episode, but it's just more of the quality aspect of some of the things that were shown in the episode, or just like some technical filming moments where you see a lot of shaky cam during scenes that have a lot of dialogue with them, or just like two characters talking to one another. And I noticed this with the scene where Oswald goes to visit Sal Maroni at Arkham. And I was just sitting there thinking to myself, like, why is there so much shaky cam going on with just two characters talking, or even just like having the over the shoulder shots, or like the individual over the shoulder shots? And like, it's moving constantly back and forth. I'm like, why is this necessary? What was the creative decision behind this scene, or why they wanted to go with the shaky cam feel? And I understand, like, even as someone that's, has a degree in filmmaking, I understand that you can use shaky cam for, creative decisions or creative choices within a scene to like maybe highlight a lot of tension or whatever. But there were just some points in this episode where I thought it was completely unnecessary, and it would have been best to not have done handheld. I'm not sure if they went handheld for like some of the shaky scenes, but it felt like it. And I wish the camera had been stationary the whole time, especially when two characters are talking to one another. And that, I don't know, because I feel like looking at a scene like that, or just like multiple scenes like that, where it's just like one character talking, and you just see the camera just shaking constantly. That is something that you would have been criticized for in film school, or just especially just like in filmmaking in general. You've been criticized heavily for that, and even potentially getting roasted for that shit. I would know because I'm speaking from experience here. But you look at something like this, and it's like, this is like a professional production. Like, this is supposed to be like a high quality show, and we're seeing this kind of like, I don't even know if I want to call it a mistake. I think it is a mistake to have shaky cam like this featured in a show of this, like, high tier, high budget show. And I'm just curious. Y'all can let me know in the comments below if you think I'm right on this, or if you had the same exact thought process when watching this episode. Because I am genuinely curious as to what you guys thought of the shaky cam elements in this episode, because there was a lot of it that I just thought was completely unnecessary. And speaking of unnecessary, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but I noticed a lot of constant cuts towards, I want to say, the latter half of the episode, where Penguin's trying to escape from Sophia Falcone and her men from chasing him, and they're having that little car chase, and it gets to a point where he hides in the trunk to like kind of lure them away, or like trick them into thinking that he ran away from his car, but which I thought was a pretty smart scene. But where this kind of falls apart is when one of Sophia Falcone's men finds him like trying to get back in the car, and they're like constantly going back and forth with each other, like hitting each other and like trying to kill one another. And I noticed like the constant cuts between like the two characters like fighting each other off, and I just thought it was so unnecessary that it, honestly, I think it gave Taken 3, that famous scene in Taken 3 with like the constant edits and the constant cuts, I think it gave that scene from Taken 3 a run for its money within this scene right here. I don't know if I can show all of it due to like copyright and whatnot, but I noticed that, and I was like, wow. Again, what was the creative thought process behind this? Why is this many cuts necessary with a scene like this? I don't think that many cuts should be necessary, but again, what do I know, right? But in all seriousness, when I see stuff like that, it can kind of take you out of the moment for a little bit, and it's just like, all right, what are we doing here? But to even highlight furthermore on this point, or like especially the quality of some of the things showcased in this episode, is I want to highlight one thing at the very beginning of the episode, where it's showing like the news footage from the events of the Batman, or like the flooding of the Batman, based off of the events towards the ending of the Batman, where Riddler floods the city with that bomb or whatever. And you're seeing kind of the aftermath of it, because this show takes place 1 week after the Batman, or the events of the Batman. And you see like the news footage or whatever, like the quality of the news footage, and I thought, this is really low quality. This looks very low quality. Like, this doesn't actually look like a real news segment. It looks like somebody was purposely trying to make a news segment look real, but it desperately comes across as like fake, or it looks really fake in desperation of trying to look real. And it honestly looked like something I'd see from Tomorrow's Teachings video, where they do like the fake news segment, and it's so goofy as shit. And I'm like, why am I seeing this in a high budget show? Because like, you'll see like the low quality shit, and then like in comparison, you'll see like some really good shots of like, Penguin staring out at the Iceberg Lounge. I was like, why does this look good and yet this looks so bad? Like, there's just some inconsistency with the quality at times, and it can sometimes take you out of the moment, especially for someone like me. But the last thing I want to mention before I conclude this video in terms of the dip in quality, or how this one particular element of the episode kind of took me out of the moment, and it was the layout of Gotham during the day. And when you see Gotham during the day in this episode, it almost makes you feel like you're not actually in Gotham. It just feels like a regular city where like not much is going on. There may be like minimum crime going on, but since this is Gotham we're talking about, this is like a super crime ridden city. You don't really get that feeling here, at least during the daytime. Like at the nighttime, it's a completely different story, but during the day, it looks really off and just looks super bland. And I almost forgot for a second that this took place in the Batman, or like in the Batman universe. Because, I mean, even in that movie, you can kind of tell, like, Gotham looks like a shithole even during the day, and it's, like, mostly cloudy for the most part. Like, you'll see some sunshiny shots every now and then, like, at least at the sunrise or dawn. But in this show, it just looks like any other show that has, like, a daytime setting, or just, like, that very basic daytime setting. It doesn't look like it stands out apart from, like, any other city, like Gotham, especially when it's supposed to be, super crime ridden. It has to, look like a shithole compared to any other place, like let's say Metropolis, for example. And it doesn't look like I was the only one that thought this, because I saw a lot of people online, and especially like, let's say on TikTok or Twitter/X, I still call it Twitter. Fuck you, I don't care. No, but in all seriousness, I saw a lot of people discussing this aspect of the episode, like what they thought of the daytime Gotham, and a lot of people were saying that it doesn't really feel like Gotham. It just feels like any other daytime setting from another show that they saw. And that's kind of my concern going forward with the show, is like that kind of quality, or that consistent quality or lack thereof. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping they'll improve on that in later episodes, or like it'll look better in later episodes. But part of me is like, don't get your hopes up. This is a TV show we're talking about. It's not like a full-on like film budget where you have good shots and you have like good cinematography and all that. But yeah, that kind of took me out of the moment, and I saw people mentioning something about the volume, and by volume, I believe people are talking about the LED screenings, or like the panels that they have sometimes for a lot of movie sets where they actually don't shoot outside; they'll shoot in-house production style. And granted, I could be wrong about that if that's what people weren't actually referring to when they're referring to the volume of a lot of the scenes, especially during the daytime. But y'all can let me know in the comments below if I'm correct in that assessment, or if I'm like right on base with the so-called volume of some of the scenes, because that's what I think they're talking about, especially like because a lot of shows are still doing the LED panels and using that, and they even use that in the Batman movie, which I wasn't the biggest fan of. I just wish people would just use real sets, like go like actually film on location, not just rely heavily on technology. And part of me understands why they're doing that now. It's because I guess in some ways it saves money, and you don't have to rent out a lot of spaces. Because I know, doing location scouting, especially like when I was filming, short films for other people, location scouting can be a pain in the ass. And I understand that LED panels, or like, the LED or XR stages can be a way to kind of compensate for that and save the studio some money here and there. I mean, even though I think you still have to use money to rent out those XR stages or the LED panels, but even that, I'm just like, can we please not do this? Can this please go out of style? Let's just use real locations. Like, I don't give a shit how much money you have to spend on the location itself or to rent it out, but I want the scenes to look real. I don't want them to look super fucking fake. You know what I'm saying? But regardless of all that, that's pretty much going to do it for the so-called bad segment of this video, or the technical stuff that I had an issue with. And that's going to lead me on to my final point, which is going forward with the series. What am I hoping for this series going forward? Now, like I said earlier, regarding my hopes and expectations going forward, I'm hoping that, this series will stick the landing. I hope the episodes after the pilot episode will be great, if not better than the pilot episode. I hope the stakes keep raising, and Penguin's character development will keep getting much better. Hopefully he doesn't, he's not shown as like incompetent or whatever. Like, they'll try to emasculate him at different points during the show. I'm hoping he'll like remain as himself, like how he was in this episode. And I hope, they continue to do interesting things within the world of the Batman, because this will kind of be an indicator of like how good the show is going forward. If this will make me more or less interested in the Batman Part 2, because I am actually fairly interested in the Batman Part 2. I'm excited. Part of me is excited to see where they go from the first movie, because I'll be honest with you guys, I wasn't like the biggest fan of the first Batman. it's not a movie I'd watch over and over again. There were a lot of things I liked about it, but there were also some things where I was just like, yeah, some of this stuff is just moving too slow for me. Some of the stuff has already been done before. It's not really doing anything new or exciting for the character of the Batman. But hopefully the show will kind of give me a different perspective, like on some things to come going forward with this Batman universe. Because I really want it to be great, and I'm definitely interested to see where Matt Reeves wants to take these characters, and to see like how Penguin, his own show, develops from here, like how he's going to get the moniker of the Penguin, like if he likes that or whatever, or why he wants to be called that. Because I understand like there's different comic iterations on how he comes to be as the Penguin. Like a lot of time, I think there's some comic iterations where like he doesn't like the moniker at first, but then he embraces it later on. And I think even Colin Farrell in some interviews has kind of highlighted this, or he's pointed this out as to like why he's like working up to getting that name towards like the ending of the series, or like during the show, whatever the case may be. But that's actually something, one of the last few points I want to bring up about the Penguin himself, or even Oswald Cobblepot, and it's the name change, like Oscobb or whatever they're calling him. I don't get that change altogether. I think that's kind of a weird change. It's like, do we like the name Oswald Cobblepot, or are we just making this unnecessary change because we just don't like Oswald Cobblepot? It's too long of a name, and we just want to shorten it to Oscobb. I think that's a little weird. I don't really like that. Hopefully they'll get to call him Oswald Cobblepot later on, and not do this like weird abbreviation, or not necessarily abbreviation, but like shortened version of Oswald Cobblepot, and just call him Oscobb. I think it's a little goofy, and I hope it doesn't stick around. But yeah, other than that, I'm hoping this show will in fact stick the landing, and I hope to be even more interested in the Batman Part 2. I hope the Batman Part 2 is a lot better than the first, because I hear like there's a lot of interesting things going on with that movie, and like the amount of time they're taking with the script. Because I mean, like what's Matt Reeves going to do? Like, is he going to copy from another mystery film like he did with the movie Seven? Because that honestly felt like the Batman kind of felt like a ripoff of the Seven, or like in some ways, like where the main villain, or the main killer, the mystery villain, reveals himself to the police, or he turns himself in because he has an overall master plan. That's kind of the way it felt, like a copycat of Seven. But I am curious to see what Matt Reeves is going to do, like what inspiration he's taken from for the Batman Part 2. Because I know this movie is supposed to be set in the winter, and I know there's rumors of him featuring either Clayface, Mr. Freeze, or even the Court of Owls, of all entities or groups from the Batman comics. But it'll definitely be interesting to see what he does with that movie, and it'll be interesting to see where the Batman universe goes from here, because I know James Gunn's DCU, or his DC universe, is about to come into fruition. We're about to start seeing more stuff from his little DCU, which I'm not really that excited for it, if at all excited for it, because it's just, knowing James Gunn, I'm not like the biggest fan of his style of filmmaking. It feels like he's doing like the same old formulaic MCU-fied bullshit that he's notoriously known for, especially with his MCU flicks like Guardians of the Galaxy. It just feels like the same old bullshit every now and then, where like characters are yelling at each other. It's supposed to be funny, it's quirky, guys. But, oh gosh, I don't know how I feel about him, handling Superman. We'll see how that goes next year, because I know it releases next July of 2025. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where his little DCU goes. Well, actually, technically speaking, like his first introduction to the DCU, like the in-universe shit, is like Creature Commandos, which comes out later this year, and it's an animated show. But like, granted, I mean, who the fuck knows who the Creature Commandos are, and like who in their right mind is actually excited for that show? I mean, other than like gun dick riders, but not like casual audience wise, who the fuck's actually interested in that? Not me. But other than that, it'll be interesting to see where the Batman universe goes from here, if at all goes anywhere past, the Batman Part 2. Because I know they just canceled that Arkham Asylum series that was supposed to be set in the Reeves verse, but now they're not doing that, or maybe they're taking that script elsewhere, like they're implementing that script idea into other projects. I don't know. It's kind of a mess over there in the house of DC, or even in the house of Warner Brothers. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to what the Reeves verse has to offer. But part of me is like, dude, why can't we just get the freaking Batfleck solo film at this point? I understand like the Snyderverse is to an extent dead, but people are still going to talk about that shit, and especially someone like me. And I'm not even like the biggest, like, I don't even consider myself a Snyder dick rider by any means. I like a lot of his stuff. I don't like every single thing he does, but I do like his stuff with DC and, or even within his universe. And I was, you know, when they announced a Batfleck solo film so many years ago, I was so excited for that shit. And like seeing a face off with him and Deathstroke of all people. Because I don't know if you guys saw it recently on Batman Day, but the storyboard artist Jay Oliva released a storyboard pic, or just like a little snippet of the work he did on for the Batman, and you just see like this like storyboard of Batman and Deathstroke fighting each other, and that shit looks so fucking sick. I was like, let's fucking go. I want to see this shit, not this shit over here. And I'm kind of being facetious about that because I am interested in, you know, a lot of the things that the Reeves-verse has to offer, but then part of me is like, okay, kind of wish we had the Batfleck solo film that would go way harder than this. But regardless of that, and regardless of what I personally would like to see, I'm excited for some things going forward. But this is probably like the only thing from DC, especially like from the Reeves-verse, that I'm only interested in, because I'm not interested in James Gunn's DCU. I don't really care about it. Wow, wish it the best, but I just, from like a casual standpoint and audience members like having to get invested into a new universe, like not even like a full-on reboot, because you have like some characters like Amanda Waller, who is in like the Snyderverse, crossing over into this universe, and then like Peacemaker is gonna be like set in the DCU, but it's not gonna make any references to season 1 Peacemaker or even like the events of the Suicide Squad, allegedly. But I don't know, it's just a confusing mess over there, and I don't really care too much for it. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for this video, you guys. What do you guys think? Are you excited for the Penguin series going forward? Are you hoping it sticks the landing? Do you think it'll even stick the landing? Or you think, I don't think it will, don't really care. Or you're just more excited for the Batman Part 2, and you're excited to see what they do in that movie. But yeah, guys, that's going to do it. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of this video, what you think of my thoughts, or my general thoughts on the Penguin and this universe going forward. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and peace out.